All right, well, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Brain Technologies web event, Crystallizing Knowledge and Learning with Personal Brain. Today's seminar is going to be all about faster learning and knowledge retention. So before we get started, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the problems that a lot of students, teachers, or maybe researchers within companies experience when trying to gain knowledge on a wide variety of topics. Right now there's a sea of information out there, and we have the ability to go out to the web and search for topics. So we search and we find. The only problem with that is we don't necessarily connect the dots and organize all these cool websites, internet resources, research papers that we're writing. So we're really living in the moment. And the big picture tends to be lost with all these disparate information sources. So really what you need to acquire knowledge is that one place to assimilate ideas and concepts and bring all our own mental models and perspectives to that information to in turn assimilate that as knowledge. And that's really what Personal Brain is all about. It's about accelerating your acquisition on new topics, so helping you understand and learn. It's also about organizing. You might have a wide variety of topics, bringing it all together in a way. And then there are some practical elements for anyone, whether you're a student, teacher, running an e-learning program in a corporation, just bringing together all these assets like your classes, registration deadlines, projects, assignments. The aggregation capability will also help you stay on top of your game regardless of what you're studying or trying to teach, so that ultimately your knowledge and your ideas and the things that you want to focus stay on the forefront of your mind. So how does creating a brain really make you smarter? How does this work? Well, first of all, by visually mapping out information, you can enhance your understanding of key ideas and themes. And I have several examples that we can cover. And once that mapping is done, you can look at it and retain that knowledge. You have a concretization of the subject matter that you just don't get from looking at a pile of documents in a folder. The ability to go back and instantly reference key information is also critical. You might have worked on a project 6 months ago that now relates to something you're doing this semester. Being able to make that connection or call upon past work is absolutely critical in a research, in a learning environment. What I like to do, which is also kind of interesting of a number of users that do this, is map out key ideas just for the sake of learning and assimilating knowledge, and then being able to go back to that and refresh your memory. So if you're studying something on quantum physics and you want to talk a little bit about or remember what the uncertainty principle is about, or something in the scientific arena, anything, just going back to an area in your brain, clicking on some of these thoughts, this visual mapping can really help to trigger past learnings that might otherwise be a little bit fuzzy in your own wet brain. And then, of course, learning is all about new perspectives, making connections, going beyond the immediacy of one event and drawing larger conclusions. So gaining a new perspective and that big picture on your information, relating that to your own worldview, the worldview of others, is something that Personal Brain allows for very well with the associative nature. So what I'm going to do is just go out and I'm going to launch the Learning Brain here, and I've got that in auto hide mode. Now we've got a number of examples, so if any of you want to focus on more specific types of learning skills or scientific research, things like that, we'll check in with you midway so you can see if there are any topics. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off on this basic brain. This is called the teaching and learning brain. And this brain is sort of designed to accommodate multiple perspectives. So if you are a student, you'd probably start with your name and maybe the subject that you're studying. If you're a teacher, you might want to put the name of your school here. But either way, I think regardless of what perspective you're coming from, you'll see how the brain can really help you bring it together. So there's several areas in this particular brain. As a teacher or student, you might be interested in the administration. So what you can link are school events. So anything that's happening, that can all be organized. School holidays, lesson plans. If I'm teaching a lesson on, Shel Silverstein poetry, I can open that up and connect to that, and that's something that might relate to K through 12 learning. So that's kind of an area where you can organize. Learning about one of the key areas of the brain is the ability to visualize complex ideas and simplify and illuminate connections that would often be missed by students. So in this particular example, I'm going to go into a couple areas. Let me start off with science. Pieces of information in the brain are what we call thoughts. And a thought can represent any type of digital information. So I've just clicked on science, and below science I've created several thoughts or child subcategories. So we've got biology, life sciences, chemistry, physics. And if I want to click on any one of those thoughts, that triggers all related pieces of information. Now, thoughts can have all kinds of things attached to them so that you can, in the very same space that you are conceptualizing that information, you can go ahead and look at photos of the human body or of living things. I can launch a document on physics, or I'm sorry, in this case, a website on physics. So you can see that has launched that particular web page. I can, of course, document my biology lesson on health, and it's launching that particular document. So it's very easy to not only see how things are connected, but access information that would be several clicks away or very remote and distant from your sort of view of thinking about it. So the other thing that I have below, I've got the brain full screen, is a notes area. The notes area is very powerful. So if I want to take notes on my next lesson on life sciences, will be about healthy eating. So I've just kind of made that note there. So I can come back to that. So if I'm somewhere else, I'll make that a little bigger so you can see, I've always got that note. So if I'm in science and maybe I'm focusing on something else, maybe I'm focusing on chemistry, if I just mouse over this thought here on biology and life sciences, and I just want to direct everyone's attention down to the lower left-hand screen where you can see that my lesson there on my note, and I can correct that spelling mistake here as well, is going to be about healthy eating. So it helps me remember and capture ideas as well in the very structure that I need to work on those ideas. So the notes area. Properties and attachments as well. This is where I can look at where I've got my documents stored, and I can track versions of documents that I might be working on. And we also have some other features that we'll get to that are great for student and teacher organization, like the calendar. I can set up reminders and events. But before I do that, I just want to spend a little more time talking about the visual nature of the brain. Now, throughout history, human beings have used pictures and sources of visual symbols to retain knowledge and to expand their knowledge. One of the key elements of the brain, the visual nature of the interface, makes it ideal for learning and acquiring new topics. So let's just go and see how that unfolds in the interface. So if I click on human body, this particular area is visualizing various biological systems. So in addition to having thoughts attached with documents, I can set up what we call thought types. So a thought type for some of these topics under the human body, one of them is a biological system, and they're all sort of displayed in a light orange color. And then we've got something called diseases and human conditions in blue. And if I want to click on any of those thoughts, that's going to trigger all related pieces of information. So if I just clicked on the digestive system, and one of the nice things about the brain is I can have this piece of information located in multiple categories. The associative nature, the ability to make connections and store this piece of information in multiple categories is a huge advantage from a learning perspective. So now digestive system is not only related to my sort of ontological organization of the human body, but it's practically, you know, I want to reference this when I'm putting together my biology lesson plan on health, so I've got that connected. And you can see how these interconnections can get pretty interesting. So for instance, if I click on the esophagus, I can see that it's under organs in anatomy, but it's also relating back to the digestive system. So I'm making these connections that make a lot of sense. Likewise for the pancreas, and again we've attached an image here to this particular system, and we can show you how to do that. I can relate that to the system that it's part of, and of course any type of condition that this particular organ might be related to. So in this case we have a lateral connection. The pancreas can be associated with undiagnosed diabetes, and this takes us up into a whole new area on diabetes, which is under human diseases and conditions. So from here I can learn about type 1, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance. I can launch that website, and I can begin to make connections that wouldn't be possible in a file folder system. So it's very easy to add new information into the brain. So if I want to go ahead and do a search on high cholesterol, for instance, I've got some links here, but let's just go out to the web. I'm going to use the Personal Brain's built-in search web feature and go out and just search for high cholesterol and cholesterol management. So I found an interesting site on WebMD that I'd like to add to my knowledge base. And that brings me to the another point about why the brain is relevant, and one of the key requirements, I think, for having a knowledge acquisition tool for researchers, students, and teachers, and that is the ability to create an unlimited network. And let me say that again, unlimited network. What this means is I can grow this area, and believe me, we have drug companies who have hundreds of thousands of thoughts. Encyclopedia Britannica uses the software actually to visualize 1.5 million items and connections. Knowledge, any academic knowledge, any corporate knowledge, it grows very quickly, and in order to be useful, you do need to assimilate a lot of it. So you want to be able to place it in a system that will scale. So there's no limit to the number of thoughts and ideas I can have in my brain. So I can build this section up, make all the connections, store all the information that I need to ensure that I have the best and most relevant information on this topic. So, and how I can do that is really easy. I can drag and drop from the web. This could also be from my corporate intranet. So if I had some interesting research papers on the intranet that I wanted to drag this link, I could do that as well. So external or internal links, and what I do is I simply drag from the browser address window, and I drop this under high cholesterol. I'm just going to add that to the brain. And now I've got this thought on cholesterol management in my brain. And you can see I already had that, so I'm going to forget this one thought. And I can continue to build that information. So if I want to go ahead and get some other information on what cholesterol levels mean, I'll go to the American Heart Association. And I've just dragged and dropped that piece of information in as well. Now, of course, this is also related to the circulatory system. So what I'm going to do is once I've got a piece of information that's not only related to my topic, but to something else in my brain, I can, of course, make that connection grow that knowledge base in a way that we're not just storing information, we're also making new connections, creating new inferences in that brain. So I'm going to go ahead and connect to the circulatory system. So that is going to, how this cholesterol functions impacts not only what we're doing here for diet and nutrition, but also the circulatory system, which goes back up. And of course, I can expand this area in the human body. So that's the way you can kind of build. You can see how easy it is to add information. The other thing that I can do is move very quickly to different views. So I might be doing my research, medical research on the human body, but all of a sudden maybe the chancellor of the university calls, or I have an admin question. So I just typed in the first couple letters, administration, and boom, I'm right back here in this area on admin. Now, integrating existing information, including documents, is just as easy as dragging and dropping web URLs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just close a few of these things and go to my desktop here. And I've got a folder called Teachers Resources. So I have some information on social studies. So if I want to go ahead and let me just go to my social studies area in my brain. Activate that, and I'm going to drag and drop some documents. So the United States history, let's put that there. And what that does is it creates a shortcut to where that document is stored out here on my computer. Now, I have many options as to how I want to store my documents in Personal Brain. So if I want to keep that as a shortcut, I can do that. Or if I want to move that into the brain, let's say I want to kind of sunset this folder structure and just store everything internally. All I have to do is go down to the Properties and Attachments tab. And for those of you who are using Personal Brain 6 Beta now, this is now known as the Thought tab. And I can right-click and simply select to move this file into the brain. And what you can see is the United States history document is no longer in my social studies folder. It's stored internally into my brain. Now I can also do some other things. I can copy documents. Let's say this introduction to social thinking, maybe I want it here, but maybe I want to copy it into a brain because I'm going to be publishing it. I can do the same functions, copying documents, pasting documents, moving them as I would between two folders as I can between a folder and my brain. So to that end, let me just go ahead and copy this. I've just copied this Word document. Go back to my brain, and now come to my social studies area and select to paste. And now you can see I've created a copy of that document. Now, just because something's in your brain, it's really easy to move it back in, move it back out. If you go back down again to the Properties and Attachments tab, you can see where it's stored. If I decide I want the United States history document back out, maybe onto my desktop, back into the folder, I can simply drag and drop it back here into that folder. So now you can see I've just got the thought without the document. And that's my brain. So it's pretty easy to add existing information. The other thing that I can do is I can actually move in entire folders. So you can see I've got this Teaching Resources folder. It's got a wide variety of subfolders in it. What I want to do is I simply want to move all that information into my brain under what I'm learning about. So I'm simply going to take this folder, drag, and drop this. And what it's done is it's created what we call a virtual thought, where all the subfolders in that directory are also visualized. And when you look at the folder, the contents of that folder appear below here in the Properties and Attachments. So I can launch those documents. The other thing that's really interesting about drag and drop for folders is if I come back out here and let me make a new folder. I'm going to call this Evaluations. So I created a new folder called Evaluations. And now evaluations also appears in my brain. And the other thing that's nice about this is rather than this being isolated in one category on my desktop, now I can go ahead and link evaluations. Maybe I'm specifically doing evaluations for our social studies curriculum. So I want to link this to social studies, or I really feel that this is an admin task. I can go ahead and make a connection to administration and have that linked there. So now evaluations is under social studies, it's under administration. This one folder is contextualized in a way that just isn't possible when it's sitting here. So that's how we go ahead and integrate existing information. Now, in terms of looking at content, you know, whether you're presenting to your peers or maybe to a class of students, there's a lot of really interesting things you can do with the display options in the brain. So I want to take some time to cover the display. So let me just go ahead and go back up to the top of Teaching Brain. So I'm in my normal view right now that shows my notes, my properties, and attachments. A double click to go ahead and make this full screen brings the relationship map to the forefront. The other thing that I can do is I can click on the plus sign right here. So if I want to go ahead and have a degree of second level of categorization there, I've got that. So now you can see when I click on post-secondary education in this area, I've got an area on nursing schools and top universities. I can see just a little bit more of what's below that area. And so that's kind of interesting in that area as well. So the other thing that I can do is change the view altogether. So I can go ahead and go back up to view and go to outline view. Now outline view is a view that I know a lot of writers and teachers quite enjoy. It's a standard outline where if I click on the plus sign, I can actually go ahead and open up various areas. And now what I'm doing, I'm just kind of scrolling, dragging my mouse up down through all these topics. You can really see, and there's that wonderful folder structure we just dragged in as well, how quickly things can grow. I can continue to then click on any area. So if I'm interested in American political parties, I can open that up. Or maybe I'm interested in the United States presidents. Look at all these guys. I can open them up. Maybe, you know, maybe it's John Adams I want to focus on. This is outline view. And of course, I can collapse any branch. If I don't want to focus on the economy or economics, I'm going to make that a little smaller. So this is another view that can be quite nice. Now I can also get to the views by right-clicking on my background and going to view. And I'm going to just go back to normal, just so you can see the difference there. So that was normal. And now, in addition to outline, I want to go and create a new expanded view. Now, expanded view is also quite interesting because, you know, relationships and connections do make the difference between a pile of documents and usable knowledge. So bringing these relationships to the forefront as a studying technique, as a presentation and teaching tactic is also pretty interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and move social studies over here and focus on that for a while. So I'm going to open this up, and you can see I still have my other stuff here. I can pretty well decide how I want this to look. So in social studies, I think I'm going to go ahead and open up history. And maybe the United States history specifically, so I'm going to move that around. And if I want to open and collapse that, or maybe philosophy. So here you can see I've got a number of things I can do. And then finally, at the bottom of this, so you can see we're coming all the way from social studies to history to philosophy. I'm going to open up the United States presidents. Now, so this is pretty interesting. We can go to this in another more in depth, but this also shows the use of something that we like to call, at another level of organization, you can put on information sets called thought types. So let me just make this area a little bigger here so everyone can see what's going on. Thought types enable you to ascribe another level of classification. So there are many ways to create a brain, and that is the fun and what makes the technology so powerful. My brain would look, I guarantee you, completely different from everybody else's brain on this webinar. But what you can do is you can decide how you want to display information. I kind of thought it would be cool in this example to just have all the presidents displayed, all 44 of them under United States presidents. Now that being said, I could have created a category for Federalists, Republicans, and Democratic presidents. But in this case, I've decided to list them all and just give each of them a thought type, which is an additional level of or attribute you can define to a thought based on their political party. Now I can change the view of this as well. So if I want to go ahead and arrange thoughts by type, I can go ahead and do that. Or I can arrange thoughts by name, and it'll go ahead and make this change. And let me just go back to normal view so we can do this again, so you can see what's going on. So type, what type does is it's now putting all the presidents from the Democratic Party in one place, all the Federalists in another, and then all the Republicans as well. So you can see the way that looks, but if I want to go back to sort of the order in which they were president, I can go back to arrange thoughts by, I'm sorry, that's not the view, that's the arrangement of the thoughts themselves, and go ahead and order by name. And because they are numbered, they're now going from number 1, George Washington, all the way to number 44, which is Barack Obama. So you can see how interesting this gets. So there are many ways you can use thought types, and we'll also spend a little bit of time showing you how to create thought types. But another example of using thought types as a form of organization is I have a section called Living Things. So often what we do when we're studying, when we're trying to assimilate new knowledge, is we use diagrams. Because let's face it, pictures are both easier to use and faster for us to glean information than, you know, a bunch of text. So that's why the brain combines the best of both worlds with providing that visual aspect, that engaging aspect that immediately enables your mind to focus on key concepts. So this particular area in my brain is actually visualizing a classic scientific taxonomy, the animal kingdom. So what I've done here is created thought types for kingdom, phylum, class, genus, and species. And so you can see that kingdom, the animal kingdom, is displayed in sort of a pink color. When I click on the animal kingdom, you can see the phylum, which is the next level of classification, is displayed in sort of a golden color. And I'll just click phylum core data. And then from there, we've got the class of the species. So in this case, if I want to go into mammals, I can see. And if I want to, again, change the view, if I want to see a little bit more, and I don't have every single area opened up. I've got sort of the cat area as well. You can see how that looks. So now we've got the family, the order, and right down to the species level. So if I want to go ahead and look at the jungle cat species, you know, I can do that. And again, how this is different from simply just an animated diagram is the fact that this visual interface is the place where you can actually aggregate information. So I don't have to have a separate Visio diagram on my research. From here, you know, I can go out to the web and do a search and get some information on, you know, jungle cats. Maybe that's something that I'm studying. So let's go to the Wikipedia. There's an interesting picture. I'm going to drag and drop this particular link. Now I've got that link right there as a resource. The other thing that I love to do is I love to use my notes section. So if I want just a quick description of, you know, what the jungle cat's all about, I can come in here and copy. And I'm going to go back to notes. Just make this a little bigger here and paste. And again, just looking at my lower left-hand corner of the screen now, and I'm just pasting that. And now I've got a nice little segment on, you know, what it is. And, you know, I can highlight or expand different areas. If I'm interested in the weight and how environmental changes are affecting the weight, I can go ahead and make that a little more obvious in my notes area. If this is a piece of information that's very interesting to me, I can build on this. Maybe I want to explore the weight across range and go ahead and start mapping that out. Or maybe I want to write a paper on how the weight varies from region and range. So I can go ahead now and attach a document. So I'm sort of living in my conceptual view. So this is the place where your ideas meet the reality of creating new ideas and working on projects. I've just now launched a document on how weight can vary across the range, and I can start typing and save that. And I'm just going to save that back into the brain. The other thing that I can do is version control. So I've got one version. If I launch this document again, let's do that. And I'm going to make a change, which I know for writers, this is absolutely critical to save your versions. I'm going to go back and save this as, right into my brain, version 2. So I'm saving that. Now I've got the little 2 attached to this particular thought, and in my properties and attachments area, you can see the 2 versions. Now, when I'm storing multiple versions in a thought, what's also nice is to make notes and utilize the note area to actually make some notes on the different versions. So I could make a note in version 2. I didn't do much in version 2 in this case, but I'll say in version 2 I increased the size of font. So now again, I'm adding that additional level of metadata. Now, the weight might be of the species might be related to the nutritional aspects of the region. So I'm actually going to link this to some of my research that I've done on diet and nutrition, because believe it or not, these animals are affected by a lot of the same things that humans are. So now I've got a link from diet and nutrition to my new report to something that was just a basic classification scheme. And I can continue to build this area. Let's just go back, and I want to add just a few more things so you can see how quickly and powerful a brain can grow. So let me just drag that in. And okay, when you see a very interesting picture, and I know there's probably been a few questions right now, how to add pictures. So let's just take this wonderful image. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste this as thought icon, so right here in my brain. So now when I look at Jungle Cat, there I have him munching on something that is probably related to diet and nutrition as well. So there we have it. This is what the guy's eating. But so you can see how interesting this comes together in a way that's fun. I've learned a few things. I've been able to make connections. So now when I'm looking at this piece of information, I'm not just seeing some static mapping of how it relates to other cats. I've got access to 2 reports I'm working on, some other web resources, leveraging past research. And it all comes together really nicely, really easily in your brain. The other thing I'm going to do when I'm focusing on a topic as a student or teacher is go ahead and create a pin. And what a pin is it's a key area. You can think of your brain as your digital dashboard for sort of remembering stuff, getting stuff done. So now, regardless of where I am, maybe I'm back in diet and nutrition, I'm back focusing on human body or life sciences, I can always get back to the Jungle Cat research that I'm doing simply by going to that pin. And I can also see that I was spending a lot of time on United States presidents. I created a pin to that. So I've got that there. Or I can go back to the history area of my brain. So pins are really nice. And of course, if you're done with something, if I am done with the United States presidents, that was last semester, I can come over here and simply remove the pin. I'm not removing that from my brain, but I'm keeping this area here, the pins in my brain, as sort of my key top 5 or 10 items that I'm currently working on that I want in the forefront of my mind. So that's it's very simple, but a very powerful feature that I use personally in my day, whether you're an executive managing multiple departments or you're a student juggling multiple assignments, you will use these pins a lot. Now finally, in terms of the visual nature of learning, I want to focus a little bit on visualizing causality and actual world relationships in the brain. So to do that, I'm actually just going to go back to standard mode. So I'm just going to put it back here, and I'm going to go into the history section of this brain. So we're going to start with the 1929 Wall Street crash, which led to the Great Depression. So parent, child, and of course Black Tuesday was a sibling. So you can see you can go downward, click downward into World War II, or I can click upward back to history. This directionality, if you're presenting, if you're trying to understand chronological events, can be really interesting for mapping out historical data, business processes in an organization, for e-learning, all kinds of things. So when I'm clicking on a topic, in this case, it's now going to show me the event that triggers. So World War II, and of course this is all interpretive, but I think this is a great example to illustrate my point here. Started in 1939 with the German invasion of Poland. That led the world to be divided into two categories. You have the allies of World War II and the Axis powers. And of course I can look at allies or look at the Axis powers. The attack on Pearl Harbor impacted the United States in a way that enabled them to then enter. They were officially entered the war. That marked the United States entry. Of course, that led to some atomic bombings, which had all kinds of horrific effects, but it also led to D-Day, which was the invasion of Normandy, where the Allies' victory. And then, of course, that sort of led to a whole new world order where the United States emerged as a superpower post-war, and so did the Soviet Union. The United Nations was formed, and so on and so forth. So you can see the way this comes together. The other thing that I could have shown you, I could have also done this in expanded view. I can open these different branches up, which is probably a better way to do it if you kind of want to see the whole timeline moving into the Cold War. But again, this is bringing history to life in a way that, yes, you can read about all these events in a textbook, and of course you will do that if you're a student or whatever, but actually mapping these things out, even if you already know them, brings to light a new level of understanding and retention of this knowledge that just even as an exercise for studying, I know people who do this just to kind of increase their own knowledge retention. But beyond that, this is very helpful to illustrate how these things fit together. Because so often, as students, we're learning bits and pieces. We hear things on the news. We memorize facts, but it's very difficult to get the big picture. So here, and again, this is interpretive. This is my own interpretation of a historic event. You can see how it all fits together. Now, if I like this view, if I want to save this view, if I want to save this and present it to Tracy or maybe a class that I'm teaching, I can go back up to View. I'm going to click on Save Expanded Views, and I'm going to call this World War II View. Oopsie. And hit OK. So this is one way to kind of save that view. And now, regardless of where I am, if I'm back at, let me just go back to normal view, back to the top of Teaching Brain, if I want to go back to my view, I can load my expanded views. So let me just load the World War II view so you can see, boom, it's there. I've got that same view. The other thing that I did a little bit earlier is I saved an Animal Kingdom view that I liked in expanded view as well. So there's that view. With the cats and the nice thought type sticking out. So that's something else that's nice to experiment with. For the most part, I actually prefer, and there's a reason normal view is the default, because it's just great for cruising around really quickly and making connections. But move into expanded view move into outline view when you're trying to assimilate a lot of knowledge. So we're sort of midway, so I do have several other examples to cover, but before I do that, I'm going to check in with Tracy and everyone in our active Q&A and see if Tracy, there are any questions that popped up on anything I've covered so far or any new directions that I should take for the remaining half of the seminar.
Sure. Actually, we have both. I have a couple questions, as well as we are starting to get some people writing in with some examples that they'd like to see.
Oh, great.
So
excellent. Okay.
Yes, we've got some good ones here.
Okay.
So you'll be excited to see these. Now, before I get into that, a couple questions that I did see, there was kind of a common theme or a common question mentioned a couple times, and that was really, you very quickly jumped from showing us and discussing presidents, and then we went into animal kingdom, and then we jumped off into history, and the question was, in you having this all together in one brain, and is that your approach? Do you keep things, do you believe in one centralized brain for everything, or do you ever find times where you would have created those as very separate topic-specific brains?
Right. Excellent question. In this case, I have to admit, and this is my own personal bias, because if Matt Caton were presenting today, he would have a brain specific for human body, specific for genetics or drug discovery. For me, I like big brains, I'm not going to lie, but that being said, it's the thought of creating one gargantuous brain on everything you're studying is somewhat overwhelming. There is something to be said for creating topic-specific brains. And in fact, this brain itself is a topic on teaching and learning. I have a larger brain here, which I'm going to switch to real quick, called My Brain, which is literally everything about my business, my personal, and my worldview, which I do a lot of, which I actually grabbed some stuff on philosophy in the United States, politics, and things like that into teaching and learning. So the cool thing about the brain is you can cut and paste from one brain into another, and you can merge different brains. Now, topic-specific brains are very important as well, especially if you want to share or publish on a specific topic. Just to give you an example of that, the writer's brain, for instance, yes, this could have been a subdivision in my learning and teaching, but this was such a huge topic in and of itself and such a focused topic. Let me just go to the home here, that I decided to create a brain completely on writing for writers. And that's something that, it's really a judgment call. So, for instance, I can go into this brain. This visualizes and has information on elements of story, on writing essays, on poetry, on graphic novels and comics, all kinds of things. And really, this particular brain, I decided to keep separate because I wanted to publish this on webbrain.com, which is an excellent way to share your information. So let me just go ahead and launch WebBrain real quick here. We can't get rid of that jungle cat today and his wonderful lunch. I hope I'm not making anyone hungry by displaying that image. I'll close it in a second here. So we're just going to WebBrain, and this is one of my published brains. And this is a whole other seminar in and of itself, but it is related to education. And of course, a lot of students and teachers most of you are writers as well. So if any of you do want access to this brain or the other brain, I'm happy to share that. I just created this new section that I've started on, psychological thrillers, which relates to script writing. But again, you can see the associative nature coming into play. I've got Blade Runner, which is a movie, under script writing, but it's also related to a certain conflict, humans versus technology. So then that also relates to other classics like Frankenstein, which in some people could argue was the first science fiction movie. And Frankenstein sort of, in a way, is a precursor to the movie Terminator, which is all about sort of machines running amok and things like that. And so we could even credit that all the way back to Mary Shelley, one of a classic writer. So these are things in my brain that I make connections. Now, some of you would probably not make a connection from Frankenstein to Terminator, but at the same time, this is what makes a brain interesting. You can do a Google search. You're going to get a ton of results on, science fiction themes or conflict, but encapsulating a perspective and our own human perspective, the conclusions that we make are interesting and of value in and of themselves. So doing that, you'll understand more about yourself, about your own views, and you can share these views with other people. So let's just go back to WebBrain. So I'm just going to go to this my own area in WebBrain. For those of you who want to share information through WebBrain, simply create an account, and you can go ahead and upload brains. Let me go to my writer's brain. What I do is I will share this with various writers. I have some friends that are working on scripts and character development and bloggers and stuff like that. So I'll update this area, and people will go here and use it as a reference. So this is one way of sharing. In this particular way, it becomes a read-only view. People can look at this brain, but they can't change it. But the other way I could share this is I can create, and I can send this to anyone who wants it, is the brain zip, which is a backup of this brain. And I don't want to replace it, so I'm just going to cancel it. And that's how I upload. Now with Personal Brain 6, and I'll go ahead and launch that real quick, we actually have synchronization to WebBrain, where you can seamlessly synchronize your brain to webbrain.com. So in other words, any changes I make to my writer's brain, or in this case for Personal Brain 6, I'm going to launch my Science Heroes brain here. I can seamlessly synchronize this to webbrain.com. Now this brain is actually a private brain. I'm actually just working on this privately, so you won't find this one in my collection just yet. And you do have various settings. But to just come back full circle, yes, you can you can create topic-specific brains. Another topic-specific brain that I have is one on my piano. This is another brain that's very indicative of the power of Personal Brain for learning and crystallizing knowledge. This is a brain that I created. It's just sort of to get me back in touch. I took piano lessons decades ago, got a new piano, wanted to review some stuff, so created a section on circle of fifths and scales, major and minor scales for music. And then as these chord progressions in their scales relate to various musical styles, you can see that G major is part of my chords, but that's chord progression for jazz piano, so that relates to my jazz music section here. And of course, one of the classic and sort of early songs that you can play is Linus and Lucy, and here's an area on songs that I'm working on. But this area really helps me keep track of my learnings. Even if you're researching teachers, and this could be grad schools, or if you're in corporate HR, this could be people that you want to hire. Here I've got listing of courses. I've got different people in the Los Angeles area that I've worked with, who I've used to learn new techniques and things of that nature. And it's all right here in my piano brain. This brain could have been separate, or could have been in my bigger brain, but I decided to focus exclusively on a topic, and I also knew that that was a brain, again, that I wanted to publish as a specific topic, so I've elected to keep that separately. And you can also find the piano brain online on webbrain.com as well.
Okay, good, fantastic. Well, let me, Shelley, this is funny that you happened to go into the writer's brain, because actually the first request that we had was from Sapphire, and she actually asked, and I'll just read out her question, or her request, in case there's something additional you want to go back into on the writing brain. And her request was, I'd be interested in seeing an example of a brain on teaching a writing class, and then utilizing Personal Brain to teach many different kinds of writing classes from the brain.
Okay,
is there a way
excellent.
to surprise oneself with the ways things connect in the brain?
Yes, surprising, absolutely. And that's what I love about the brain. It's always a surprise. Before I go into my sort of pre-built writer's brain, I think what an interesting thing to do, and thanks, Sapphire, for the question. I'm going to go and create a new brain, and I'm going to call this I'm just going to say writing. If I can spell writing correctly, a writer who can't spell, who can't write, is going to create a writer's brain. So let me go ahead and do that. So the way to do that, so if I'm a teacher, and this is the same approach for students, is I'm going to think about kind of all the key categories, or what I like to call knowledge hubs, that I want to come back and circle and grow. So there are many elements of writing. Maybe I'm going to be teaching a course on the classics. So I'm going to add classics. The other thing that I might be teaching a course on might be science fiction. So I'm going to create an area here. Now I'm just starting to do some maps of the various genres. Classics, science fiction, I can do English literature. That could be something else. The other thing that might be worth focusing on is nonfiction. Nonfiction works. And specifically, a section on grammar is always good for any writer. And let me just go ahead and add those areas into the brain. So I use the semicolon to map those out. Now for grammar, what we might want to add is an area on the elements of style, thesis development, depending on what level of course you're teaching, and then we can just have stuff on prepositions, or let's just call this diction. So from there, I can go out to the web and start preparing whatever lesson I want. I mean, I might have a lesson plan that I'm working on thesis development. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and attach a document, probably a Word document, and go ahead and start developing my lesson plan on thesis development. From there, maybe I want to relate thesis development to War of the Worlds. Now, War of the Worlds is science fiction. So now I've got War of the Worlds. I'll just go ahead, related to science fiction, and also thesis development. So we can talk about that, or I can go into nonfiction and so forth. So it does get pretty interesting in the way things can come together and get connected. And again, using the search web feature is actually just fantastic for building courseware or doing research. So from here, I might want to go out to the science fiction area and drag and drop. I love the Wikipedia. I actually have parts in my brain where I actually just take sort of key elements, like stuff from the Wikipedia, and put it in my brain and use that to build my knowledge base. Like for instance, a key element in a lot of science fiction is time travel. So hey, you know what? That's kind of interesting. Let's explore science fiction works that focus on time travel. Or let's explore space opera. So now I've just created all these new sections. Now you might ask yourself, well, why would I do that? I've got this right here on the Wikipedia. Well, I mean, the Wikipedia is just one page of knowledge, and I want to take these ideas from the Wikipedia and grow them. And the other thing that I like to do too is under fantasy, if they have a nice definition, I'll go ahead and copy that. And I love the notes section. I think all of our users do too. And look at this. This is just fantastic. So now I've got this area on science fiction fantasy that I can continue to grow. If I want to do more distinct research on time travel, maybe I'm writing my own novel and I want to understand the validities of this. I want to understand, practically how could this work. So I'll go ahead and start building a section in my brain on time travel, and who knows where this could lead. Maybe we have some great inventor using personal brain right now and developing something. Wouldn't that be cool and nifty? So okay, so there's another section on dimension and time travel. You can see how interesting this becomes So just in a couple minutes, how all of that comes together. And then, of course, you can add backgrounds to your brain. So if I want to go ahead and get an image, kind of like this image. So I'm going to copy this image, and I'm going to paste this as wallpaper. Ooh, looking nice. So now I've got my writing brain, science fiction, all kinds of things, focusing on time travel. I'm going to create a pin to time travel. And you can see how this grows, and how interesting, how many connections you can make. And then eventually, something that just starts off like this, and you can see how easy and fun and quick it is to build. Start this basic brain off, and then eventually it becomes this, where all these different headings, where you might have all your own writing projects that you're managing, themes for books, poetry here. I've linked to various websites. The other thing that I've done is starting now to use thought types. So for instance, if I have a new poet, let's just say Robert Brown, I can go ahead and add him into my brain. But if I want to now classify him as a poet, I can go over here to thought types and go ahead and select poet. So now I've got a thought type. And it's very easy to create thought types. So if I want to create a thought type for, let's go over here to say Hollywood scripts. What I can do, let me just go ahead and click on Blade Runner. And I'm going to go to type and create a new type. And I'm going to call this type Hollywood. Actually, let's create a type for Hollywood movie. And hit OK. And then from there I can go ahead and grab an icon by capturing an icon or using the icon capture tool. But in this case, I'm just going to go with color. So I'm going to create a custom color, maybe a nice bright yellow here for Hollywood movie. So now I can see under script writing, I've got Hollywood movie as a thought type. And let me just go ahead and link Terminator here, which is also Hollywood movie under script writing. And I'm going to go ahead and thought type this as a Hollywood movie, and Pulp Fiction screenplay, again, thought type that as a Hollywood movie. So now you can see I could have created a new category, but if I want everything linked, I've just got these interesting thought types. And now if I want to arrange my thoughts by type, all my Hollywood movies would appear in one place, and everything else. So that's kind of another way of classifying information. In terms of some other interesting things I've done for writing, I've visualized some key cornerstones for creative writers, which I call the elements of story, everything from climax to character development to symbolism. And one of those things is the heroic journey, which is I've got a thought type in an area in my brain for theorists. He sort of theorized on the heroic journey and all the various phases that our characters and archetypes go through when we tell stories. So in here, I actually added an image on sort of a classic image of how that journey starts when you develop a story or a script. But then I've actually got each step of this mapped out in my brain. So then if I want to go ahead and focus on any of these things in my writing, I can go ahead and do that. And that is related, of course, to characters. And so you can have a whole area here on heroes, heroines. You can link. I've got links to different heroines in my brain. So you can have a lot of fun as well. And I think that's the interesting thing about the brain. In addition to engaging with your content in a way that you really wouldn't be able to do in any other medium, you're not only engaging at a deeper level, you're enjoying it, it's fun, and you're going to benefit from this structure. I created this one night for a certain project that I was working on, and I've come back to this It's surprised me to no end as to the kinds of connections I've made. I love areas on inspirations. Whether you're a writer or a scientist, this is another area that's absolutely fabulous. So you can do a lot of visualizing where you want to be in your brain for creatives and for scientists. So that's just another example here of kind of how you can really inspire yourself and grow your own ideas in personal brain.
Great, fantastic. Well, Shelley, I do have a number of questions here, and I do see, looking at the time, we're at the hour now.
We are. It's gone by quickly.
There's
so much to cover with personal brain and learning and knowledge retention. I mean, this topic really just strikes at the chord of what personal brain is all about. So I think what we'll do, for those of you that do need to leave on the hour, we do want to be respectful of your time, but I'm going to continue the Q&A for another 15 minutes just to ensure that we've covered everybody's questions. So if you do have time to continue on, we invite you to stay. If you do need to leave on the hour, I'd like to thank you for your time and participation.
Right, and I'll just mention real quick, if anyone that does have to drop off, if you did have any of the questions that we haven't gotten to yet, all you have to do is write to us at support@thebrain.com, and we'll get you some answers. But I'll go ahead, Shelley. There's a number of questions here, as I mentioned, and there's one from Gary. And I know you've talked about thought types, but we haven't spent too much time talking about tags. And one thing Gary had noticed, we should probably discuss tags, but the one thing he noticed is, why do you have the @ symbol before the word in tags? I think you noticed that early on in your teaching and learning example.
Right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to another example here. And Gary, thanks again for your question. With the brain, again, so there are three primary ways you can sort of sculpt your information and create this personalized network of knowledge. First of all, you can do that just simply by classify the parent, child, and thought relationship. So in here, I've got my business. I've got categories for business development ideas. So that's one way. But the second way, as you're probably noticing, which we covered a little bit when we did some thought typing in the writing brain, is through thought types. So in addition to creating a category, I can create a thought type. So here there's a thought type for competitors or competitive offering. And that's the second way, through thought typing. And a thought type really is a primary attribute I am giving to a thought. So here I've listed all competitors, and they have the thought type competitor associated with them. Now, the final way that you can also add more, ascribe a secondary or third way of classification to your information is through tags. And here I've got a whole, and let me just use the resizing circle. And again, we do get this question a lot in sports, so I want to bring it up in the Q&A. Feel free to, and I do this all the time, and I apologize if I might even be doing it too much for this seminar. I like to really adjust the size of my brain. If I have a lot of things displayed, I'll push the resizing circle inward to make things smaller. Or, I like to, have a big font size a lot of the time too. So if you want to make the size bigger of your fonts, just push outward. But anyway, back to our third way of classification, that another way to ascribe additional context to a thought, in addition to the linking and thought types, is with tags. So this particular example here, this is a brainstorming session that a company's done, ideas for marketing expansion. So first step, creating all these thoughts on, what can we do to expand our market? Second step was then to thought type any green-lighted projects. So if we're actually going to go ahead and hire more consultants, we've got approval. I thought type that as a green lighted project, because that's sort of a key dimension that I want to look at when looking at my information. But then finally, there's something called tags, and tags are great for getting things done, organizing tasks. This is basically the area, and I'll just go back down here and click on my tags, where you can tag certain thoughts. Now, in a brainstorming session, I like to tag things with the level of feasibility I ascribe to getting something done. So I have a lot of tags here based on cost and time frame. So for instance, let me just create a new idea for market expansion. I'll say opening East Coast office. So I've got this new idea. Now what I might want to do is I might want to tag it. So I'm going to tag this as medium cost. There will be some costs in opening this new office. Actually, I'm going to untag it as medium cost. I'm going to tag that as a high investment. It's going to be pretty expensive to open up a new office. This is something that we'd like to do now, so I'm going to add that tag to this. And it's definitely something that's going to be taking at least a 6-month time frame to execute. So now I've got these tags. And so they're sort of a secondary dimension in looking at information, but they're important. The @ symbol is really great because if I want to go ahead and do something, just type in the @ symbol. That's a little trick to get the tags to pop up in the instant search. So I just type in @ and I've got all my most important tags. So for instance, when talking to CEO, I love this tag. This could also be when talking to professor, when talking to the chancellor of your university. I pull this up because I don't want a thought in my brain in a whole section on when talking to my CEO, but just randomly as I'm working in my brain, I think, gee, I need to discuss this with my CEO. So that's where a tag can be really, really nice and really wonderful. So now when my CEO walks into my office, I've got all this stuff right here that I can discuss. Or likewise, let's say we get some investment. Here are all my high investment projects. My department gets budget. Okay, boom. I know exactly what I want to do. And of course, these things might be in all kinds of other areas in my brain. So sales campaign is under sales, but it's also tagged as high investment. So that's how tags work. So there are many ways to kind of organize things. So you can experiment. Once you've created your basic structure, experiment with thought types and tags, and that gives you even more power and more ways to look at content.
Great. And a follow-on question to that was from Colin, and he just asked specifically if you could define the difference of thought types versus tags versus labels.
Right. Okay. Well, a label, that's true. I can label any thought, so why not just create a label? So maybe for the sales presentation I want to call this, a label might be really cool presentation. So label, and this is kind of a silly label, but I do this for a reason because labels are sort of temporary things. A label is something that you're probably only going to be using once or twice. Now, it's useful to create a label, but if I wanted to actually add an additional level of meaning to this thought in the form of typing it, like calling it, maybe I want to create a new thought type in my brain for best sales resource. That's where I go in and create a type. You create a type when you want to use that more often. Same thing with tags. Like a label I'd use if it's just sort of a one-off attribute that I'd never use for any other thoughts. But if I'm going to be using this new way, this new classification, so I'll just call this, I'll create a new thought type for sales resource. So what I want to do is I want to highlight anything in my brain that will be an excellent sales resource. That way when I'm training new sales reps, they'll have that. So let me just go ahead and I'll give this a pink color. And now I've got my sales presentation as a sales resource. The other thing that's a sales resource are the proposal templates. So I'm going to come back to thought types, go to sales resource, and you can see I've got a lot of thought types here, and tag that. So now my sales resources are all appearing there. And that's the other thing, you can start to organize by type. Let me just jump into my investing area of the brain, where here I've got thought types for investment tools, thought types for investment topics, and you can organize them that way. So a thought type is something that you'd want to use pervasively throughout your brain. One thing about thought types is they do then take on the primary, that's the primary attribute of the thought. So if you don't want your thought changing color to see what your thought type is, that's where a tag can be really nice. So that's where I like to think of tags as sort of secondary to thought type. And this area in this brain kind of illustrates really nicely. Here I've got some thought types, a thought type of a green-lighted project, a thought type of a hot topic, and then the tags are coming in as sort of secondary. And by the way, I like to see my tags on my screen, but there is an option in properties to shut your tags off so you don't necessarily need to see them as well.
Good, okay. Well, we've got another question here from Ricardo, and this is in regards to files and internal files or shortcuts, and maybe virtual thoughts would be something relevant for him. But basically what Ricardo wants to know is, I don't want to use internal files because I use them with other areas, by mail, for example. So another option is to drag and drop, but my problem is that after a certain time, I don't know which are the new files in the folders that I haven't dragged into my brain. What can I do to have the same files, but not like an internal file? An internal file.
Yeah. So you know what? The best thing for you to probably do is to just move to a virtual thought where you have the folder, like in teaching resources here. This way, it's always going to be in sync. Because if you don't want to store your files internally, so here, this is just, I can launch this folder right here, get to that stuff, and then I've got that. I mean, the thing with dragging and dropping is you can absolutely run reports on shortcuts. And that might be one way to see you know, all your different stuff that you have attached. Let me just go do a report real quick. So if I want to go ahead and run a report by thought types, thought tags, or attachments, in this case, external attachments. This means stuff that I don't have stored in the brain. This is actually a nice report to do. We usually have the opposite problem where people, they create a lot of shortcuts to documents. Then when they want to publish their brain, of course, the stuff is pointing to stuff on their computer and not internal in the brain. So actually, you know, as I'm talking to this individual about how to kind of manage shortcuts, I also want to point out, especially for people who are publishing or teachers and students who are sharing brains, if you are sharing that brain back and forth, I do recommend storing the file internally. But, and if you have a lot of external attachments, I can go ahead and click. I've just run the report, and I can see that I've got stuff here that, so right here, this is right here, I've got a shortcut to best practices. This is stored externally, and I can see where it's located. Now, in terms of kind of synchronizing what you have in your brain and don't, the best way to do that, I would say, is, you know, you just kind of look at this file, you know, go to that section and kind of compare things. But yeah, the good news is you have the flexibility. I also want to remind you that, you know, if you do store something in your brain, you can still send it out. So if we go back to, let's say, teachers' resources, and I create a new thought internally, let me just drag the staff memo in. Now that's a shortcut. So I'm now going to right-click, move it into my brain. Now, if I need to email this, let me just launch email for a second here. I can simply drag and drop this and send an email. So let's give it a second here. Create a new email. So all I have to do is drag, and I'm just going to position everything so you can see, drag and drop this from the properties and attachments area into my email, and I can go ahead and send this to Tracy. Staff memo. So just because stuff is stored in your brain doesn't mean you can't drag it out to do things with it. But that's sort of one way. And then again, like I said, if you are having synchronization issues that have to keep things outside of your brain, I would recommend just dragging and dropping that folder and doing a virtual thought where we're literally visualizing that folder structure. And that way, again, anything that you do outside of this, if I want to go ahead and rename this to just top research instead of health research, that's going to synchronize with my brain. Now this folder is renamed in the brain because this is a virtual thought. This is constantly just providing a window to what's outside of your brain as well.
Sure, that's great. Now, just for Deb just asked the question, and maybe for just confirmation on everything that you've just been showing, and her question is, so does drag and drop not store the file internally? And I thought maybe it's a follow-on also showing in preferences.
Okay, and that is a good question. No, that is the default. That being said, you can change it. So when I drag and drop, let me drag and drop Play-Doh forms. I'm not sure what this is, but I'll drag and drop this in. Drag and drop this. And it's really easy to see. The brain makes it really easy to see because, of course, you've got that little shortcut icon. The default is to keep it where it is, and so now I've got this as a shortcut. Now, that being said, if you've sort of made the decision that, look, when I'm dragging and dropping, I just want to move stuff into my brain. One of two things. When I do that, I can then right-click on the file and move it in. Or I can actually go to Preferences and go to the UI preferences, and right there it says on drag and drop files of personal brain will link, which means I'm just creating a shortcut to where that file exists on my desktop. Let me go ahead and change this. I actually do have this changed for my own brain because when I'm dragging and dropping something into my brain, I'm actually moving it in. But we don't want to be that presumptuous for other users. So I'm going to select this to move files, hit OK, and again, this is in Preferences under UI, how you want the drag and drop to work. I'm just going to hit OK. And let me go back out here, go to Social Studies, United States History, drag, drop. You can see it's moved it in this case. It's no longer in my Social Studies file. It's in the brain, but again, that's because I adjusted that preferences. But that's not a bad thing to do if you don't want to confuse yourself. But like I said, you can do either. You can store your files internally or externally. It really depends on your situation. We have a lot of corporate users who, for instance, are sharing files on shared drives. In that case, shortcuts make sense for them. If you're a student just using your own computer and might be sharing your brain, go ahead and drag and drop them in. That way, if you publish it or zip up your brain and share it with a friend, you don't have to worry about references to stuff on your desktop. But if you guys do have any questions, we offer free technical support, so we're more than happy to recommend an information strategy that's right based on your unique situation.